This is one of those shows that it's going to be a little ADD, but I promise it's all going to make sense by the time it's over. So if you can't stick around for the whole thing, make sure you catch the entire program at some point later today. There's only like 50 different ways for you to do that at this point. So realistically, it's on you for not knowing rather than it is on me, you know? Subscribe to the channel. We're live on YouTube. Couple people already taking part. I love this little community. It's separate of the text community, which is great. And by the way, shout out to Jerry. If you weren't listening to the local half hour, Jason Zimmerman is back from his vacation to Mexico. We talked basically the entire time about his experience trying to get in and out of the airport here. And everyone's experience is different. And it's funny because people who voted for a certain president really want to emphasize that the airports are being overblown. And I'd argue there's a lot of statistics to the contrary of that. But it's not that there are airports that they show you and the lines are basically non-existent. So it really is on a case-by-case basis. Jason really did have one of those experiences down in the Atlanta airport last week en route to Mexico, which just sounds harrowing. And Jerry highlights last night he needed to pick someone up at the Appleton airport. The flight arrived at 1:45 a.m., 6 hours and 45 minutes late, which that kind of feels like the more accurate experience that I think a lot of people are going through. And again, it's not necessarily leaving from Appleton because it's a pretty well-run operation mixed with it's not like we are the most populated part of the nation here. So we got a couple of things trending in our direction on that front, which is good to know. And I would like to highlight for those of you that were listening to the local half, Wisconsin Radio Network was reporting that both Appleton and Dane County airports were on the chopping block to close, which Jason and I were talking off the air. And Jason was like, that would be such a hit to us economically. We were like, yeah, man, we know that would absolutely be terrible. It's a good thing that the government is working on getting their act together, which is at least how we're going to start this conversation. And for those of you that haven't been hearing the promo playing for the last 24 hours, Wisconsin State Senate candidate Emily Sephos is going to be on the program at 9:30. She's going to be joining me via StreamYard, so you'll be able to see her on the YouTube channel there as well. We're going to be talking about a fundraiser that she put together in order to help facilitate these TSA agents as they are approaching 7 weeks of no salary. How many of you listening, as we stated, one of my main statistics that I give you guys is always 2/3 of people are living paycheck to paycheck. If they miss a paycheck, their entire life gets upended. We are now 7 weeks into this. What percentage of people listening to me right now really feel like they could miss 7 weeks of paychecks? I'll tell you what, right now, I'd be feeling it. And I think most people listening to me are probably in that same boat. Looking forward. Looks like there's a couple of fans of Emily Sephos in the YouTube chat there. Yeah, she was when she was running for state assembly against Dave Murphy. I had both of them on the program during their candidate there. We got to know each other then. So I'm looking forward. This will be the second time she's been on the program, not in a campaign capacity, but just in a how you guys can help, because even though this might be wrapping up over the weekend, it doesn't mean that there was a large loss in revenue over the course of the last almost 2 months of a shutdown, which I want to get my thoughts on that in a second. We do have our first caller, which I'll happy to take any calls or texts here, 920-281-1150, 920-281-1150. And if you are catching this show after the fact, you're not listening to it live, shows 9 to 11 Central Time. We welcome all participants to come into the show. I might make fun of you if you say something dumb, but that shouldn't discourage you from taking part in the show nevertheless. Hello, you're on Outside the Box.
Hey, Ben. Well, 7 weeks without a paycheck, I'd be in trouble. But the reason I'm calling is because what is the justification from the moron who's not in charge for wanting to close Appleton and Dane County airports? I did not hear that part.
It was mostly because so many people were leaving. I believe the stat Jason gave me was 40% of the TSA agents at Atlanta airport had called off or weren't showing up, or quit, whatever the situation may be. And I'm not harboring any resentment towards them, but the plan was to take TSA agents from smaller operations and put them at the larger ones. And so Appleton, as Jason pointed out, we are not technically a small market. Even from a media perspective, we are identified as mid-market. There's plenty of areas that are much tinier than what Appleton is. And so the idea that Appleton was on the chopping block, and for the record, so was Dane County, which is even a larger area than we are. We're both on the chopping block, I'm assuming, to facilitate TSA agents in the Milwaukee airport, So that was the game plan there. Go ahead.
This wouldn't be permanent. It would just be temporary?
Yeah. And again, I don't want to cause, and I appreciate the call, Cindy. And just to be clear, because I realize not everybody listens all the time, this is a story from Monday that was potentially going to happen were this to continue. Looks as though we are towards the end of this happening, which is a net positive. That being said, and again, that's 9:30 for Emily Sephos. So we will be talking about, because even if this ends, I think there is absolutely a necessity to kind of facilitate the people who are not getting paid. And I will never not, I realize that's a double negative, but I will never not be an advocate that if the government is screwing you around and telling you you're not allowed to make money, I don't think you should be required to pay for things. Maybe food and that kind of stuff. But in terms of your monthly bills, there should just be a box. Be like, yeah, my government sucks and told me that I'm not allowed to make money. So I'm going to check that box. You will get your, sorry, bank, you will get that mortgage payment, or sorry, landlord, you will get that rent payment, is probably the more likely scenario to pick in this country, when the government decides that the work I do is worth paying me for again. And I feel like that should just be a universally accepted thing. I have a feeling you could probably get about 80% of the country behind a bill like that, because as an empath, I absolutely feel what those people are going through right now. So hopefully we get on the other side of this. Now, on the other side of what exactly, I think is the most important question here. If you guys haven't heard, the Senate overwhelmingly, in a bipartisan fashion, voted to reopen the government, to end the partial shutdown, to fund all of the different components of DHS that are not ICE. For those of you that are uninitiated, that means that ICE is going to be funded via reconciliation. That means you only need a simple majority to get it across the finish line. For the DHS to be funded, you needed 60 votes. That was the problem. It was kept failing, 53 to 47, or if the Democrats proposed it, 47, I'm doing the numbers wrong there, but you get the point that I'm trying to make. It would never get across because you needed the 60 vote threshold. Reconciliation only needs the 50 votes. So we're going to fund all of the different programs in DHS, assuming this passes the House and Trump signs off on it, which is a big, if, in my opinion. But assuming that all goes according to plan, the prediction made by one talk show host about the potential for this to be done by Monday will have been accurate. That being said, and I'm interested in calls. We have about 10 minutes before Emily is going to take part here. So I'm interested in opinions on this. What was the point of this? Right? Like, I remember, part of me kind of feels like this was the Democrats trying to make good on messing up the healthcare shutdown, because there was an actionable change. Like right now, we have millions of Americans that lost healthcare. We have millions more Americans that are paying more for healthcare because the Republican Party would rather fund a never-ending war than the Obamacare subsidies that have been allowed to explode far beyond any reasonable measure over the course of the last 16 years. And that was there was an ask, which the Democrats did not get. But there was an ask for, let's make sure people have health care, because we're the only industrialized nation where this seems to be a problem, and every other nation seems to have figured out how to do this in the right way. The ask for this one was that there would be common sense reforms for the masked Virgin Army. And for the record, at airports at least, they're the unmasked Virgin Army, which is good. But when they're out and about, they are still causing mayhem, not treating people correctly. There was one horror story about one woman who's an American citizen talking about exactly how ICE treated her. They just seem like awesome, very qualified people. None of those were included in this. So I go onto social media feeds and I see a bunch of liberals declaring victory and saying, let's watch leftists spin this as a failure. A lot of conservatives claiming victory. Meanwhile, what did anybody get? What was the point of any of this? Now we have the funding. ICE is still going to be funded. Nothing has fundamentally changed. What was the point of this? We got our first insight, couple of texts as well. We'll do call first. Hello, you're on Outside the Box.
Exactly, Ben. What was accomplished? The Congress still has no spine. We all knew that they were TSA was going to come back. They couldn't leave on their 2-week break. And tell me, what's the difference between a break and when they're in session? Because nothing gets done anyway. This is all a big game to make Hakeem Jeffries be able to stand up and say, "How dare you?" And the Republicans to point at the Democrats and say, "How dare you?" And yet the TSA people have to go 7 weeks without a check. It's just ridiculous. It's posturing. It's the rich telling the poor what they get to do and what they don't get to do, and shut up because you don't have a choice in the matter. It's sickening, and we all knew it was going to happen.
And it's the tribalism, Brian, that allows them to get away with it, because inevitably all the Republicans in my text and YouTube chat are going to blame Democrats, and all the Democrats are going to blame Republicans. Realistically, they needed to compromise. And as long as they know that their diehards aren't going anywhere, they're going to do it again. This won't be the last time that we're dealing with this. And I think it's a very frustrating reality. And on top of all of this, it could have ended a week ago, except for Donald Trump straight up said, "I'm not signing anything, regardless of what happens." And I feel like that's not getting reported enough here. But I think you're right. And it really does suck.
Ben,
go ahead. Yeah, go for it.
Do you possibly think that this wasn't already solved 3 or 4 weeks ago, that everybody knew how they were going to vote? I mean, Fetterman is already a Republican. There's the group. They have the votes. They know what they have to do. And you're right. Donald Trump stood in the way, and how he doesn't get more grief in anything he does. I cannot believe that every day we have to listen to him pushing ahead when Congress doesn't say a thing. If they're not all in on it, then shame the Congress. Thanks for letting me speak.
Yeah, of course, Brian. Thank you for calling in. And I'm pretty much in agreement with anything that he had to say there. I have nothing else to add, no notes, because I think he's spot on. I think that's a fair assessment of the matter. And my memory goes forever. It's both a blessing and a curse when it comes to doing this job. And I will remember the people who were quiet about what was taking place here and the people who were vocal about it. And it's a shame that we have to go through this. And again, I don't understand to what end. Millions or thousands of Americans getting paid less, millions of Americans being put out. I mean, realistically, Jason and I joked about it both on and off the air, but like, the only reason you joke about it is because nothing bad happened. It's kind of like when a ref makes a good call in a football game. His plane, imagine being on a plane, you feel the wheels touch the ground, and then a jerk reaction back up into the sky, and you take back off again, essentially for a second takeoff, and the pilot comes on and essentially says, "There was traffic on the runway, we had to get out of the way," because everybody's so clustered, everybody's so overworked, everybody's doing the job of 2 and 3 people. What kind of conversation would be having had the pilot not had the wherewithal to do something about it? If you haven't seen the visuals of what took place at LaGuardia, you can tell the pilots tried to take off again once they realized that the fire truck was there, ultimately costing them their lives while saving the rest of the lives of all the other people on that plane, which is unbelievable in and of itself when you stop and think about it. How many close calls have there been that aren't getting reported on this way? I think is a very important thing to question here. Hello, you're on Outside the Box.
Morning, Ben. Jerry from Appleton.
Hey, Jerry.
So I want to highlight a really big story that relates to this airport mess. and I'll have more to say about it, and you probably will too. But
Yeah.
when you have a war going on, it's hard to
Agreed.
focus on the longer term strategic things.
Yeah.
So I lived in the Washington, D.C. area from the age of 9 until I graduated from the University of Maryland. And as a result, I have a lot of close friends and family who had most or all of their career with the federal government. So I get kind of an inside view. Here's the missed story. Agency after agency after agency is just as messed up as TSA and the FAA and the air traffic controllers. But it's not getting reported much because it's longer term strategic stuff. And when people talk about the deep state, I can tell you as a fact that 95% at least of what the federal government does is hardworking people doing essential work. I'll give you a quick example. Somebody I know extremely well worked for the Social Security Administration, and his job was to make sure that people got their checks on time. That's what most of the federal jobs are like. And if people had any idea how bad a lot of federal agencies are right now because of the president whose name I refuse to speak.
And Doge.
What Doge did.
Yeah, right.
Books are going to be written. Books are going to be written about how utterly ridiculous and stupid most of what Doge did. So that's what I have to say.
Yeah, I
And
think
it's a miracle.
Go ahead.
It's a miracle I'm awake to hear you by now, by the way, because I was at the airport at 2:00 in the morning. Ridiculous.
Yeah, I hear you, Jerry, and I think you're spot on, and I appreciate the call. And we even talked about it a little bit yesterday about the exact failures that Doge was, or the success that Doge was from the perspective of Elon Musk, because he was able to collect a ton of data on all of us from the Social Security office, while also concurrently eliminating any government agencies that actually are here to stand up for workers and consumers. So if you have 10 figures in your bank account, Doge was absolutely a rousing success. Or if you hate transgenic mice or think that transgenic means transgender, then you probably view it as a success as well. For everybody else that actually wanted to see real accountability in government, bit of a failure. All right, we got a bunch of texts piling up here. KG says, I no longer live paycheck to paycheck, but I've no longer forgotten what it was like. Oh, I'm right there in the same boat with you. In fact, there's off of Eminem's original album, the Slim Shady LP. The lyrics get a little rough for some of you, I'm sure, at times, but check out the song Rock Bottom. And to me, there's no better encapsulation of what 60%, and this song came out in 1997. There's no better encapsulation of what paycheck to paycheck life in America feels like than that song, and the hopeless feeling that you feel when you're in an environment that really doesn't foster growth or development or the capacity to escape the kind of cycles that we're on. Justin says, why did they want ICE funding at all when the big BS bill gave them more money than several militaries, our own included? Well, that's just it, Justin. I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into this that really aren't consistent or make a lot of sense. And like, to me, this felt totally avoidable. And there's been a lot of people speculating that this was somewhat of an effort to try and facilitate the privatization of TSA. And I'd argue it's getting kind of close, honestly, because I even was watching talking heads on bleeping MSNBC, the leftist network, that were advocating for the privatization of TSA, which I don't know if you've ever seen. I don't know what's worse, government run or privately owned, because it depends on the situation. Do you want it to be a little bit more efficient but just be so expensive until they corner the market and then can also be inefficient again? Or do you want it to be inefficient but at least cost effective? And like, that essentially feels like what we're deciding between. But you're exactly right. There was 173 billion or something to that effect. I don't have the number in front of me, promised from the billionaire kiss ass bill to ICE. So I'm right there with you. David says, I'm assuming Trump would have played his hand and veto any bill that does not contain legislation to fund ICE. See, I don't know, because I think there's enough people, none of them are in MAGA, but there's enough people out there that understand that Republicans can get ICE funding across the finish line without Democrats in a separate piece of legislation. Again, nothing fundamentally was accomplished by this shutdown. That's, I think, the most frustrating part about any of this. Nothing was accomplished other than making people's lives a living hell. And thankfully, we as a community are in a position to be able to come together and try and assist some of the people that live in the area, at the very least. And hopefully other communities are doing the same. And we'll have a guest coming on shortly to talk about that with us. But I don't know that he would veto it, because as we're going to be talking about in the 10 o'clock hour, the writing is on the wall. There are Wisconsin Republicans very nervous about what's going to happen in November, and Trump really doesn't have a lot of leeway to screw people around. And if the House and Senate, every single Republican in the House and Senate voted to get this funding across and reopen the government, and Donald Trump alone, who also started a pointless war, vetoed that funding and made it a living hell to continue traveling, there's only so many ways that these people can jerk us around before even MAGA voters lose their will to do so. So with that, I can see in our green room we have our guest waiting in the wings. We also have texts from Susie and DSL coming through as well, and we'll try and get those in on the other side of the conversation with Emily Sephos. She's running for Senate District 19 here in Wisconsin, as well as putting together this fundraising effort to try and assist so many people that have got the bad end of the deal regarding this shutdown. People that need our help, that, as Jason and I highlighted in the 8:30 hour, are in all likelihood living paycheck to paycheck. We're going to talk about where the idea came from, how far along they are in their efforts, and what you can do to help on the other side of the break. So everybody stay where you are. Quick break here, and we'll be right back. Outside the Box, Ben Cominos, WHBY, and Political Voices Network. All right, and we're back to Outside the Box with Ben Cominos here on WHBY, Political Voices Network. This is going to be going live on YouTube at 1 p.m. It's also, of course, live on my Ben Cominos channel as well as we speak. The chat is pretty active right now, and it turns out a couple of people there are big fans of the next guest here, so allow me to introduce it to the people who have no visual aids. Emily Sephos on the WHBY StreamYard facility here. Emily, she's running for Senate District 19 here in Wisconsin, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. We've got a pretty awesome effort going on. So Emily, thank you for being here. How are you this morning?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. I was thrilled when I saw your press release come across my way here, because as a lot of people who like this show, I like to highlight, I'm good at showing people what's wrong with the system, but not necessarily providing the solutions to those problems. And so I'll always have an eye out for the people that are trying to do those solutions. And it seems like you're one of them here. So let's just start with the basics. Where'd the idea come from? How long did it take you to put this together? And how long have you kind of been trying to facilitate this?
Yeah, sure. So I actually just saw on Facebook that Appleton International put up, like, hey, our TSA workers have been without pay. If you can drop anything off, that would be great. And, like a lot of, I'm always thinking, like, how can we make this more accessible and easy for people to participate in? They didn't have like a link to donate or anything like that. And I was like, well, as a private citizen, that is certainly something that I can do. GoFundMe is a very very popular way to do that kind of stuff. So it really was just setting it up and putting it out on like my networks and my social media, and having it go from there. Like, as of this morning, we've raised just under $8,400. So we're going to pull that and then get gift cards to the administrative offices who will determine or distribute them to the TSA workers that have been without pay for over a month. So it was really like a low stakes kind of thing, but we just started it on Monday. So the fact that this community showed up in such a way in one work week is pretty incredible.
I couldn't agree more. And it's just out of curiosity, is this specifically for the Appleton Airport TSA agents? Will people in Milwaukee? Okay, so this is for our neck of the woods here. That's absolutely wonderful. Do you know, have you been in touch with any of have the TSA agents reached out to you? Do you have any in your life personally that you've had these experiences with? I
just have through friends, like connections. So they've been
Sure.
talking to them. And I'm I'm trying to tread that line with like private citizen doing this work kind of thing, but also know that I'm very political. So I want to like kind of create that permission structure for people to be like, I'm just here to help. That's all that I'm here to do. But I do know that behind the scenes, they, like for the most part, I've heard that the agents specifically here in Appleton have been feeling very supported by the airport itself, in that they're trying to do what they can to kind of get them through these times. As a reminder, these folks have gone through this already in the fall with the government shutdown and are now experiencing the same situation again, while at the same time, mortgage, rent, gas, groceries, they don't stop. Those bills don't stop coming. And so it's just been like trying to get them along. I know that they're frustrated for the most part. Who wouldn't be? A lot of people don't have, that padding financially in their bank accounts to make ends meet when things suddenly stop coming. And so we're just really trying to meet that moment of crisis and say, hey, this is how the community can show up for you right now. And again, really grateful that Appleton and the Fox Valley area always does the right thing for their neighbor. So.
You took the words right out of my mouth there. I've lived up here for about 3.5 years at this point. If there's the most consistent thing about this place is in moments like this, a lot of people really do step up. I know the outside the box community has been following along with this for a while, and optimistically, assuming there's not a veto coming from the top here, it does look like this is going to be coming to an end here in the near future. But it doesn't mean, to your point, that fiscal pain hasn't been felt and will be felt long after in a paycheck to paycheck society, which I'm sure, whether it's TSA or whatever profession you hear from in your efforts here, there's people struggling with that no matter what kind of career they have here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, I think at the end of the day, what I'm most frustrated about is that, like, with government dysfunction, which we are certainly seeing, it's working folks that can afford it least that are bearing the brunt of that dysfunction. And that's what's really like apparent to me. And what I want to keep calling out is because we can't continue to use working people that are doing everything they're supposed to do that never asked to be put in the situation as pawns while decisions are being made in Washington and Madison that are screwing with our neighbors' livelihoods. It's wrong.
So correct me if I'm wrong. The target was 7,500 for this dollars, I should say, for this fundraiser. Correct. So you've already surpassed that goal, which is absolutely fantastic news. Is it still going on today? Listeners right now that want to chip in any way that they can. How much longer is it going to go on, and how can they take part in this effort if they want to try and help make a difference as well?
Yeah, great question. If you go to I'm on social media everywhere, so it's just Emily Sephos for Wisconsin, and it's TSEFFOS if you don't have visual. But it's on there. I have a GoFundMe, so I'm sure that at this point you can look up Appleton TSA GoFundMe, just Google it, and that'll pop up. And what we're going to do is they're going to take that money and begin to pull it so that we can get gift cards. It takes a couple days, of course, to transfer funds. But the gift cards then will be purchased, delivered to the administrative offices, and we'll be sure to be as super transparent about all of that as well. And then we'll continue to keep it open for about a week or so at the very least.
Do you know the number of employees this is going to be impacting?
I believe I haven't gotten solid confirmation, but the one person I talked to in the offices said it's about 75.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I mean, every dollar is going to make a difference for these guys. I think it's great what you're doing here in taking the initiative to start something here. I think it's going to catch a lot of eyes here. I don't know if you can see our chat here on the stream, but a lot of people loving what you're doing here. And I got texts piling up as well that I'll get into once I let you go here. But I think it's great information again. And again, you can find the GoFundMe on Emily Sephos's social accounts. That's TSEFFOS. Trust me, it's a hard to spell last name. I know the game, so you got to say it a couple times. Otherwise, it's harder to do. Emily, I appreciate you making a little bit of time for us here this morning and helping to spotlight this, because even through the weekend, I think this is going to make a huge difference for a lot of people. So thank you for being here and for what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. And thank you all who have contributed. It means the world. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely wonderful stuff. You have a great rest of your day there, Emily.
Yeah.
And she, I think, does fantastic work. Again, that's her second time being on the program here. First time in a political capacity. This one a little bit more so in an effort to try and make things just a little bit easier. And again, when you do the math, it's a little over $100 per person. But you know what? I remember being 25 years old and realizing that I had no money in my account for the next day and a half. And I remember, I'm not going to get into the specifics about it because it kind of highlights how disorganized my life is, but I ended up coming across $60 worth of cash that I didn't realize I had. And what a lifeline that felt like in that kind of moment. So for anybody who's never lived that kind of life before, I don't think you can truly understand exactly what a difference this kind of effort makes for people in that scenario. So kudos to her for doing what she's doing. I think it's fantastic work. And more importantly, I think it's necessary work. We got a couple more people talking about the shutdown here, and then we'll go to another break. Okay, Susie says, Ben, I just sent you an email about Emily. I did donate. I fly often. I had told my husband 40 days ago that there should be a jar or collection for the agents. I would have given $10 for every leg of a flight. I know it was not acceptable. So that way. So thank you, Emily. I flew 4 times round trip flights in that time, Phoenix to LAX 3 times and Phoenix to Appleton. I came home for a funeral early in March and back. I always thank every TSA worker I encounter for coming into work. The staff in Appleton are always great. I totally agree with that. We have pre-check, so even in Phoenix, in Las Vegas, we never encountered the lines we see because pre-check is worth it. Yeah, it's a free advertisement there for pre-check, but you're not wrong. I always sit there eyeing up the people who are able to skip the line because they pay extra, which is a nice... it is a nice effort there, but still, to say it's an extra benefit there for sure. But yeah, I feel you there, and that's a very nice message for you to share, Susie. So thank you for that. DSL says TSA would be privately owned but subsidized by the government, like a lot of privately owned big business. I think you're spot on with that, man. I like, honest to God, I think if it were privatized, that would be where it ultimately ended up. And I think you're exactly right there. He just followed up with the banks should also provide interest-free loans to government employees during shutdowns. We bailed out those scumbags and they never have returned the favor. I'm right there with you, dude. Like, these are good ideas. And I think a lot of people would get behind a lot of these things. We have the money to do it. It's just a matter of the will to do it. Tony out in New London says, Ben, this is a microcosm of what the government is doing to make our life difficult. I mean, to a certain element, yeah. And the worst part about all this, Tony, is that I think there will be a pendulum swing because there's a lot of frustration with the way this government's behaving. And then Democrats will have the excuse that they are trying to undo so many of these changes that that's why they're not able to deliver on any of the actionable changes that they campaigned on. And there's going to be a large swath. I will be skeptical of it still, as I always am. But that'll be a believable enough line for a large enough percentage of the people that they won't expect any type of change. It's like how MAGA voters right now are acting like, well, we had to undo all the Joe Biden economy stuff, even though most of the economic metrics that you look at post-COVID had kind of leveled off by the end of the Biden term. Not to say that corporate greed wasn't screwing us over, not to say that consolidation in industries wasn't artificially jacking up the price and the cost of living has gone up for everybody. But again, there's been no real effort to address that, and it really does feel like just the unwinding of a lot of progress that's been made over the course of the last 10 years. Ken says, do you think Trump really cares if the Republicans are going to win or lose in the coming election? Do you think it's just for his personal gain of all the millions for him and his family? Does Trump care? No. Do the people that need Trump to care? Yes. Like, that's fundamentally where it is. And you see these articles percolating through, which I put no stock into, much like I put no stock in the Joe Biden growing increasingly more frustrated with Benjamin Netanyahu's efforts in Gaza. Like, I don't care. If you're not willing to come out and say it publicly and do something to stop it, then I don't care. But all of those articles are coming out now about the Republican Party, that they're quietly getting frustrated, that it feels like they're up poop creek without a paddle as a result of a lot of the decisions that Donald Trump is unilaterally making for his party. I don't think he cares. I think he is trying to enrich himself right now. The corruption in this party, for that man, I should say, dwarfs anything that 10% for the big guy could possibly have meant. We're in a post-corruption America, though. But I'll tell you right now, you know who does care? Tom Tiffany. Jim says the shutdown had two things that were accomplished. Nobody is talking about Trump and his party taking insurance subsidies away and jacking up medical costs, and very few people are talking about Trump's starring role in the Epstein files. You know, it is funny. I thought about that yesterday. Epstein's basically out of the news at this point. So, I mean, I think you are right. Between the war in Iran and and people seeing healthcare costs shoot through the roof and a government shutdown that no one can really identify why it is, we are ignoring the fact that Donald Trump has been mentioned 38,000 times in a pedophile list. You're right. That's a fair assessment. And Jerry just simply says Emily is terrific. I think she brings a lot to the table for sure. I'm glad that she had some time to chat with us here today. I thought that was some good info there. We'll have that up on the website and on my YouTube page. It's there right now, but it'll be on the website there as well. Let's see here if I can we'll just peruse a couple here. It says, look at our reps that have APAC money in them. End of confusion. Tell me I'm wrong. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. And I realize that probably got me on a list for saying it and you for typing it, but nevertheless, I couldn't agree with you more there. But yeah, and I appreciate the comments there. I'm going to peruse some of the YouTube comments. I got a couple of emails here as well. Otherwise, we can even talk a little bit. We received that text there from Ken talking about whether or not Trump cares. Let's assess what's going on in early voting for the Wisconsin Supreme Court seat here. If you weren't listening to the local half hour, Jason and I were mentioning a little bit. We have some time, or we have some data about where votes are coming from, and I feel like this is indicative of how much fewer people care, how little people care. That's the right way to say that. How little people care about this race this time around, comparable to 2025 or 2023. But more importantly, I think it also highlights a little bit of enthusiasm, at least in terms of early voting and mail-in voting, which, as we all know, is fraudulent. But we'll assess some of that data and talk about why I think that matters on the other side of the break. So everybody stay where you are, and we'll be back in a moment. You're listening to Outside the Box with Ben Cominos here on WHBY and Political Voices Network. I want to dive into this Erica Kirk parody skit so badly, but like it doesn't fit in narratively to what I'm talking about. There's a chance I do this to start the 10 o'clock hour because I just can't help myself. We'll find out. Only time will tell. It's also been brought to my attention that more than 99% of the American population has not subscribed to the Ben Cominos YouTube page yet. If you find yourself not driving, or even if you are driving and get to your destination, all you got to do is type in Ben Cominos, all one word, into your YouTube search bar. Brings up the channel. We live stream the show every day on that channel. We've got a little community growing there on top of the text community, on top of the email community. Just helps me out as well. So if anybody finds themselves with a little bit of free time, go hop on YouTube right now and subscribe to the Ben Cominos channel. That would help me out quite a bit here. We're going to do the Erica Kirk story in 20 minutes, I promise you. But I do want to keep this narratively kept together here because, you know, it's the kind of show that I do, right? As I kind of teased there, we are a couple of days into early voting. It started on Tuesday for the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And realistically, there's a number of races that are out there, but that's the one that's kind of capturing a lot of the attention of everyone. And we can kind of view the metrics from a state perspective there as well. And the statistics are pretty interesting, although not unexpected, I think is the best way that I can describe them as of right now. Wisconsin's turnout as of 12 days to go. So this was yesterday. We don't have any updated numbers for today. I imagine they'll come out. These are from shortly after my show wrapped up yesterday. So I imagine shortly after my show wraps up today, there will be new metrics out that kind of highlight exactly where we are. 85,000 people have voted across the state, which, if I can just say, that number is going to be very unimpressive in a second, just compared to what life has been. But the fact that so many people show up in a state the size of Wisconsin for an April election for Wisconsin Supreme Court is an inspiring number, nevertheless. And just to, you know me, I'm so plucky and full of optimism. Just to be a little optimistic about what's going on, I think Donald Trump's biggest legacy in America is going to be getting so many people who were kind of apathetic towards anything outside of presidential politics off the benches. You know what I mean? Like my political career kind of started right around then, but it was more so because Bernie actually invigorated a ton of millennials more so than anything Donald Trump did. But also the guy does make it captivating. Nevertheless, I hate to say it. It's just a fact, unfortunately. But I think that will be his legacy, is that even 85,000 people, I think, would have been 12 days out. That's a good number. I'm just going to say that. However, compared to 2025, it ain't crap. 137,000 people had voted at that point in 2025. And as Jason and I have been highlighting, that one was for control of the court. Now, I think not caring about this race because it's not for immediate control is a very short-sighted decision. I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't understand the logic, but what am I going to do? I'm just providing you my own insight here, but that does feel short-sighted. Moreover, just because voting is down, it doesn't necessarily mean you have an indication of how people are voting. In Dane County and Milwaukee, 31% of the ballots are coming from those two counties. In 2025, it was 27%. Now, again, there are no guarantees how the people in those areas are voting. However, statistically speaking, those are two of the bluer areas in Wisconsin and are more likely to vote democratically. And yes, I understand this is not a partisan race, but as I also understand, yes, it absolutely is. And then conversely, rather, in the conservative WOW counties in the southern part of the state, they are at 17.5% of the total breakdown of the ballots, compared to 20.5% in 2025. So, statistically speaking, no guarantees from any of this, but statistically speaking, the conservative percentages are down, the liberal percentages are up, and the overall number is down. Does that mean more people are waiting to cast their ballot in day? Maybe. I mean, I've heard from the sitting president who engages in mail-in voting that mail-in voting is illegal. So maybe a lot of people that follow that president are just deciding to wait to do their own legal version of voting. That could potentially be it. There's no way to guarantee. I'm not making any promises. I'm not telling anybody what's going to happen. I am saying, statistically speaking, I think that's a bit of an indicator. And on top of all of that, you can see, and we spoke with Charles Franklin on Wednesday, which you can catch that show on the WHBY app. We spoke with Charles Franklin on Wednesday, and a lot of the statistics are highlighting that enthusiasm from the Democratic side is much higher compared to the conservative side. You would think, to Ken's point last segment, that there would be a change of approach, a change in demeanor, a change in verbiage that maybe reflects what more people are looking for. It doesn't matter what polling you're seeing. Independent voters, which I would argue a large percentage of outside the box voter or listeners are. Independent voters, not even barely 1 in 4 of them are seeing eye to eye with the way that Trump is carrying himself just barely a year into this presidency. Keep in mind, when you guys met me, when this show started, it was September of 22. We are almost 5 months away from essentially being at the same point in the Trump presidency with a trifecta that we were in the Biden administration. In the Biden administration, I could point to the infrastructure bill. I could point to the efforts to chew around the crust of a sandwich that was leaving a large percentage of people under 40 behind, making it easier to cancel subscriptions, canceling bank fees, requiring airlines to give you your money back if they screw with you. These were all positive things that didn't address a much larger option. We are 5 months away from being at that exact same point in the Trump presidency, and I would defy you guys to point to me towards things that we should be talking about in a positive light in the name of making life more affordable for Americans. because I'd be hard-pressed to find examples. And I'd argue this Wisconsin Supreme Court data is only highlighting the exact trend that we are on here. A lot more to say about it, and not a lot of time to do it. Download the WHBY app, search WHBY in Google Play or the App Store. Check us out on YouTube. We're live streaming right now, and of course, it'll be on Political Voices Network at 1 p.m. We've still got a whole other hour to do here, and we're going to jump into something controversial on the other side, outside the box. All right, and we're back. Ben Cominos, WHBY, Political Voices Network. Outside the Box is brought to you by Roush Plumbing and Remodeling, the plumbing and remodeling company the Fox Valley depends on. If you're just joining us, we spent the bulk of the first hour talking about the potential for this shutdown to come to an end, about bleeping time as far as I'm concerned. We still got to get through the House, which is going to be happening a little bit later on today, but I doubt they have the guts to gum up the works there. And then it's all going to be a matter of, does the orange man do the thing that is obviously the right thing to do? Really no way to know. There's really no way to know. Came across a post that says the whole reason sending my kids to die in the Middle East because I saw an interracial couple in a GMC truck commercial. And like, honest to God, it really does feel like we're a far cry away. Like, I have found myself being very reflective the last couple of days. I'm an introspective guy. I'm sure a lot of you pick up on that just from the way that I kind of talk doing this show. And I always like think back on the kind of segments that we were doing on this show in September, October, and November of 2022. And like, if you guys weren't there, like, I'm doing episodes about like the black woman that was cast as Ariel in the Little Mermaid movie, and Lizzo playing Tom Jefferson's flute and twerking at the same time, and gets what's happened to this country, and just the conservative outrage for it, and then like, you know, to the point like the interracial couples all over commercials and whatnot, and it's just crazy what pushes the conservative mind into just losing it. And then what is like, oh, well, let's pump the brakes and wait and see. Like, yeah, we are murdering fishermen off the coast of Venezuela with relative impunity, but like, how many Chinese women are going to be in the next Star Wars movie? You know, you got to pick and choose your battles here. And if you know me, you know, like, I'm a millennial, right? We come from a different era. Like, we are the first generation that grew up calling stuff gay that had nothing to do with homophobia, but then also we're the first generation to be like, we probably shouldn't do that. Probably don't have to do that anymore. Like, I understand why referring to something with a negative connotation and describing it with an entire group of people is probably not the best way to describe something, and I probably have a big enough vocabulary that I could find a better word to describe it, right? Like, we were the people, like, that's kind of our accomplishment, and I'm proud of that reality. But like, always remember that edgelord humor 15-year-old boy is still in me somewhere when I see things. And I am in favor of making society, not necessarily sanding off the edges, not being afraid to make a joke, but understanding that there are limits, and you need to be able to determine where those limits are, how those limits work. I'm in favor of that. And you can go back on my Facebook page to the night Charlie Kirk was assassinated, and I was very calm, and I asked for everybody not to be jerks about it, because it seemed clear to me that a lot of people were very upset about what happened. And for me to stay calm, it takes a lot. Go check my videos out from after the Masked Virgin Army murdered Renee Good. It was a bit of a different approach to content that night. More specifically, I believe in a normal circumstance that the widow of somebody who was assassinated not even a year ago should be off limits. And there are jokes that can be made. And if you find it necessary to make a joke about a normal situation, that says to me that you're probably just not good at being funny. Like, if you have to use the F slur for gay people to get people to laugh, all that means is you're not funny. And you should just work to be funnier rather than trying to take the offensive shock route to try and get people to laugh at whatever comment that you are trying to make. The Erica Kirk situation is a bit different. In my opinion, there was a very obvious effort to monetize the events that took place and almost shame people for being offensive. And again, I am doing a mea culpa here to highlight that, he who is without sin cast the first stone. I am not here coming down on people for making jokes that are a bit edgier, that are a bit more offensive. That's not me at all. But to be clear, Republicans have not stopped complaining about cancel culture for 12 years and say, why can't I make jokes anymore? And then the second a liberal or a leftist or anybody decides to make a joke about Charlie Kirk, all of a sudden comedy is illegal again. I'm trying to figure out, did Elon Musk and MAGA make comedy legal again or not? And if so, live in the world that you want to live in, right? I would not do what happened yesterday. And if you don't know the story I'm talking about, it's a wild one. I would not do what sketch comedy artist Drusky, he's an internet comedy artist, did about Erica Kirk. But I am also not as funny as Drusky. What he did was essentially dress himself up. He's a heavier set black man. He dressed himself up in what people are referring to as whiteface, not a thing. He dressed himself up in whiteface to be Erica Kirk, and then just parodied some of the most memorable moments of the last 6 months. Like when she would do that weird thing where she would stare at the camera all creepily, or came out with the pyrotechnics in the background during a funeral, and just these over-the-top things that feel like it wouldn't have even made sense on the Righteous Gemstones. When you do those kind of things, you are inviting yourself to be parodied. I'm not saying that as a widow or as a widower, you need to shut up, stay out of the limelight, and not vocalize your opinions about things. But allow me to tell you, once you decide to make yourself a public figure, people are very comfortable telling you that they hope you die, let alone doing something in a creative and funny way, albeit about an insensitive thing. If you guys are wondering why I really don't comment a whole lot on my Facebook Messenger posts, like the private Messenger posts, it's because quite a few of them post Renee Good murder were hoping that ICE was going to find me next. And I decided, you know what? I probably don't need to read these anymore. So when you invite a public presence, that kind of stuff can happen. And so you just got to be grown up enough to understand it. Unfortunately, Erica Kirk is going to try and double down on the right becoming the cancel culture police again. I guess they're back to being pro-cancel culture. You guys going to cancel Mortal Kombat next? I'm not sure. And is suing Drusky for defamation for dressing up like her and doing a pretty uncanny impersonation of the way that she had been acting for the last 6 months. You can't sue for defamation and satire. It's not going to go anywhere, but it's going to get in news cycles. And you can already see the people who are on my feeds going, LOL Gazan children, LOL Melissa Horseman, LOL Renee Good, are all of a sudden devastated that someone would have the audacity to make fun of a podcaster, I guess. I'm not 100% sure why Charlie gets a little bit of extra leeway in this conversation. Oh, that's right. He doesn't. He doesn't. So you're either all or nothing. And it's going to become a major right-wing story over the course of the next 6 months or so. And so I want to get out ahead of this now. And I, Ben Cominos, am declaring comedy alive and well and saying that this is absolutely allowed to exist. And to anybody who is offended by it, buck up, snowflake. Facts don't care about your feelings. What are all the lines you say? You need a safe space? What are all the lines Republicans would say? This is the way that this stuff is supposed to work. Consistency is king in this matter. Hello, you're on Outside the Box.
Hey there, Cynthia in Florida.
Yeah.
You remember, I think, I waited a week. I didn't call you about Charlie Kirk at all.
Yeah.
And what got me was, and I had been widowed twice. What got me was her having a film somebody, and she's caressing his hand in a coffin, and put this out publicly. This is a private moment.
Yeah.
So this woman was self-promoting from day one, and I cannot stand Candace Owens. But you know what? She has showed never make a sister mad. And she had this on her show last night. And she said, what you just said, this is a safe space. We're not canceling anybody.
Yeah.
And she showed that clip of this woman. And I do believe she knew he was going to die. I mean, there's just so much stuff that has come out.
Well, I'll defer to you on that. I don't
yeah.
follow along with that, but continue.
Yeah, well, again, you have to look at her show and some other guy named Barron, somebody. But, this is a mess. But you know what? The FBI, when what's his name? The guy that the whistleblower just came out. Joel Kent.
Yeah.
He said they wanted to help investigate who assassinated him. The FBI shut him out.
I've seen
like
that.
The FBI has been took over the investigation over Savannah Guthrie's mother. They don't want these things investigated. But yeah, look at Candace Owens if you get a chance. You will laugh your head off.
I will, and I appreciate the call, Cynthia. And yeah, like Drusky, he's been around since well before I moved to Wisconsin. He's a funny guy. Like he basically does SNL style sketch humor, but like over the internet. It's Gen Z. It has it written all over it, right? It's not a scheduled time on TV or anything like that. Like so many people listen to this show, I'm sure probably are a little bit more used to. He's a funny guy. And this sketch, if you've been following along with it, it is funny. Like, it's like the kind of thing, it's the same reason when you laugh at the crap that Trump says, you're like, oh, I hate myself for laughing at that, but God, is that funny? It's the same idea. It's the exact same principle, and you have to remain consistent about what is funny and what isn't. If you think that comedy should be legal, comedy is open to interpretation. I have watched people, Ralphie May used to do stand-up comedy routines about the handicapped population that I found to be a bit tasteless. Jim Jeffries would do stand-up routines about the handicapped population that I found to be some of the most hilarious bits that I've ever seen in my life. Any topic can be funny when done right, and any topic can be offensive when done wrong. And the whole point of comedy is trying what you think is funny and then seeing what happens next. There's actually a sketch with Jim Jeffries, or not a sketch, a routine with Jim Jeffries where he talks about cancel culture. This was like from 2020-ish. And he said it's a comedian's job to press up against that line, put your shoulder up against it and never cross it, but you're always pressed right up against that line of what's outright offensive and what is actually funny. And he said what you can't do is 10 years later move the line and then go back to a 10-year-old sketch and be like, oh, can you believe he said that? It's like, well, no, that's not where the line was then. Like, you're not allowed to go back and change things. And that has kind of been the perspective that I have examined comedy from since that routine. And I think that saves everybody a large amount of time. So as one person in the text line reminds me, when Pelosi's husband, Paul, was attacked by the dude in the hammer, and like they're in the whitey tighties, and it was a comedic scene. Right wingers had a field day with it. You can be offended by that. You can find it hilarious. I don't care which one of those two you pick. But then when Drusky does this about Erica Kirk's behavior post Charlie Kirk assassination, you better have the same bleeping opinion about whether or not it's funny or offensive, and not pick and choose based on whether or not you like the person that's being made fun of. Because believe you me, and I learned this lesson in January, a particular political party gets very loud when you hurt their fifis. And you guys are going to need to grow up. I'm still ticked about it. It was almost 3 months ago. It's going to take me some time to get over it, if you can't tell. I'm still hurt. But nevertheless, I at least wanted to touch on this because I don't know how much this has actually entered the mainstream yet, but I've been following along with it for the last 24 hours, and it's like the Afro Man case. I should have paid more attention to it because it's probably one of the best stories in 2026, and I just like mentioned it for 10 seconds and moved on. That's exactly what happened in the Afro Man case is exactly what would happen in the Drusky case were it to actually go to trial. There is no defamation. It's satire and it's parody. And anybody who followed along with Erica Kirk for 7 seconds and then watched that sketch would be like, I hate that that's funny, but that's pretty funny. I'm just saying. But nevertheless, I at least wanted to shine a spotlight on that for you. My YouTube chat is going insane. I'm gonna read this a little bit during the break, and I'm gonna get some of the funnier comments out of there and try my best to get that to you guys. In the text line, KG says, one life lesson I've learned is that there is no one approved official way to deal with loss of a loved one. Everyone mourns in their own way, but I never considered marketing as one of the stages of grief. And you're exactly right, KG, because I'll be the first one to admit I lost a parent. I lost my mom to cancer in my early 20s. I make dying from cancer jokes regularly. It's the way that I have processed that in my own way. I make jokes about the stuff that makes me upset. It makes it not make me as upset anymore. That's my way of handling it. And it's on a person by person basis how they decide to handle it. I am not saying that everyone has to do it my way. I'm saying leave me alone when I do it my way. Zach says she's only mad because it's so accurate. That's real. I'm telling you, I think that's when people get the most mad is when they're like, oh, son of a gun, this is exactly the way I've been behaving. And Justin says Erica's coming out to pyrotechnics reminds me of President Camacho from Idiocracy. 1,000%. And he goes on, BTW, have you seen Kirk was appointed to the Air Force Academy Board in line with them pushing Christian nationalism in our military? I haven't seen anything about that. I'd have to look into it, but I appreciate the tip nevertheless. We're going to go to break. There's still quite a bit more that I would like to dive into here. We got to do some Iran talk before we call it a week. I have one clip of J.D. Vance saying something. Have you ever woken up from a dream or a nightmare and you've got like your partner or someone you're dating, or maybe if you go back to when you were a child, a sibling, and they're in the bedroom with you and you wake up in kind of like a panic and you start talking like you're still in the dream and everyone around you is confused? I feel like that's a pretty ubiquitous feeling. I feel like the vice president might have done that about the rationale for why we need to go to war with Iran, and it stands out to me as a very funny way to talk about something that's very serious. And I'm gonna show you guys exactly what I mean, because I'm willing to bet I found a pretty obscure clip, and I feel like you guys aren't going to believe what I'm about to play for you guys on the other side of the break. So stay right where you are. I'm going to sift through this YouTube chat and get some of the comments out of there as well, because you guys look like you're having some fun in there that I want to see what everybody's saying. It's impossible for me, once you guys get going, it's impossible for me to do this show and read everything you're saying. So I will double back on that on the other side of the break. So everyone stay where you are. We're going to Iran next. Outside the Box, WHBY and Political Voices Network. There's a huge chat going on in the YouTube channel right now talking about how what's referred to as exennial. Like, I was born in 87. I oftentimes joke, like, I grew up, I'm 38 years old, and depending on the situation, you might see me stick my head under a sink faucet and just start drinking straight from the faucet. That's a Gen X move, right? Or at least in Pittsburgh it was. Maybe I'm outing myself right now. Show of hands. Who in the Fox Valley drinks literally straight from the sink? I still, to this day, I fill up this water bottle. I forgot my Waka Waka water bottle today. My bad, Anna. I still fill my water bottle up straight from the sink, and we have a thing. Like, I could just push a button at the water fountain, or the bubbler, as you people say, and just do it that way. But I don't. I do it straight from the sink because that's the way that it worked for me. I spent the first half of my life without a cell phone. I spent a large bulk of my life without the internet, and even when we got the internet, it was dial up for a long time. We're in this like tweener area of life where you remember the way life operated, but you were also young enough that you were able to acclimate but not get so swept up in it that maybe some of your social skills diminished a little bit as a result of it. I oftentimes joke it really is was a hell of a time to be born, because it's an interesting transition, and it's people in that era, as some people in the chat are highlighting, that those are the ones that kind of started to change their vernacular, stopped calling stuff gay, stopped using the R slur to describe people that, is a slang for mentally handicapped people. And, like, for the record, not to pedestal about this, because again, I don't police language. If you want to keep using the R word, I'm not going to stop you. But, like, just know anytime I hear you use it, I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that person was kind of dumb. Like, I don't say it out loud. I just think it, and then I move on with my day because I'm not going to waste my energy. But let me tell you, having worked with children with special needs for 3.5 to 4 years in my young life, I used to say it all the time. And they tell you when you get the job, they're like, you do not say this word around the campers. I'm like, totally. But like when it's every fifth word you use, and anyone who's a millennial knows that that's not an exaggeration. Like, we said it all the time. It's really hard to take it out of your vernacular. So 2 days into the job, we trained for 2 weeks. They're like, don't say it, don't say it, don't say it. You're learning all the ways to do different things there. That job still, other than this job, it's the best job I've ever had in my life. Not even 2 days into the first week-long summer camp, I still remember it like it was yesterday. It was spina bifida camp. It was for adults. We had like something like 100-something people show up. It was a 10-day long camp. Incredibly overwhelming for a 20-year-old Ben, but I learned so much about myself and my ability to do things. I used the R word not even 6 hours into the first day of camp. And I used it. And what's the line that ignorant people say all the time about it? It's like, well, people that are in that boat don't actually understand what the word means, so you don't need to feel bad about saying it. Say it in front of that population, and you tell me if you still agree with that sentiment or not. Because something tells me you might wake up to something that you might not be particularly informed on until you actually live it yourself. And the look that I got from one camper in specifically that I knew heard me say it and was hurt by it, that was the last time it ever exited my mouth. That was sometime in the summer of 2008. Here we are in 2026. Again, say whatever you want, but it's just like those kind of experiences. I learned how to make people laugh without being a jerk. It's not particularly difficult. Well, yeah, it is, actually. It's a hell of a skill, and you should all be jealous of how good I am at it. But in any event, I just wanted to put a bow on that. But I saw everyone kind of talking around that there and sharing their own experience. A couple of people in the chat born in the late 70s. And yeah, they pegged me for exactly when I was born. So you guys nailed it. But nevertheless, all right. So we're shifting gears here into the war in Iran. And I was kind of joking. I said, it's kind of like when you wake up from a dream and you're talking about the dream still as if it were real life. I very famously, when I was in college, my college sweetheart and I were, it was like 3-4 o'clock in the morning, and I wake up in a cold sweat, and I wake her up and I say, apropos of nothing, I still randomly think about this. I just go, oh my God, thank goodness fish can't use wallets. And like, I couldn't even tell you what that had to do with anything. Like, I don't remember what the actual dream was about, but I woke up and said, thank goodness fish don't use wallets. And I'll allow you guys to fill in the blanks. Everyone, she just looks at me like, what the hell are you talking about? We had a good laugh about it once I realized that I had kind of, dozed off and I didn't know what I was talking about anymore. It creates some very fun moments, is my point. What you don't want is the sitting vice president to say something that fits into that same vein. I was watching a clip of J.D. Vance at the most recent roundtable. Well, what's the word I'm looking for here that I'm blanking on? All of Trump's cabinet meeting. All of them were sitting there and they were going over the pros and cons of what's going on with Iran. And J.D. Vance has had to toe a pretty delicate line, because much like Ken brought up in the first hour, there's a lot of Republicans that are kind of being dragged down by Donald Trump right now that have aspirations for the future. J.D. Vance has been cosplaying as a populist, bought and paid for by Peter Thiel, of course, for the better part of his entire political career. And he cannot at any point come off as though he is advocating for this war or supports it in any way, but also needs to blindly support Donald Trump, because there's a percentage of this population, roughly 27%, that will absolutely disown you the second you say anything your dear leader did was stupid, bad, or wrong. So that puts J.D. Vance in a very tenuous position, and that's how you get gold like what I'm about to play here. Now, I will say that the topic of conversation isn't funny, but if you weren't listening to the first segment, I'm allowed to laugh at whatever I want. Grow the heck up. This is J.D. Vance talking about the importance of going to war, sounding like what could only be described as a fever dream to me, something that an 8-year-old dreamt up and then woke up and immediately started talking to his parents about. Listen to this and imagine not being laughed out of the room by anybody that has ever been in any type of military experience before.
When I say options, I think it's important the American people know options for what? And it's options to ensure that Iran never has a nuclear weapon. You talk about people who walk into a crowded supermarket and have a vest on, and they blow up the vest and a couple of people get killed, and that's a terrible tragedy. What happens when what's on the vest is not something that can kill a couple of people, but can kill many, many tens of thousands of people? That is the most important American national security objective that exists for any administration at any time, is you don't want the worst people in the world to have a nuclear weapon. That's why the president is doing this. That's why the president cares so much about this particular issue.
Okay. Okay. Suicide bombing, not funny. Nuclear war, not funny. The war in Iran, not funny. Mixing all three of these together in some kind of fever pitch, I'm assuming only to trick boomers that are just very hawkish, absolutely hilarious. The idea that there would be people from Iran showing up in vests, equipped with nukes, doing nuclear blasts on suicide vests, shows such a fundamental lack of understanding about how nuclear energy works, about how nuclear bombs work, about how war works, about the mentality of the people in Iran, about so many things. And the craziest part is, I know that with every fiber of my being, 30-ish% of the country immediately is now terrified of the idea of nuclear bombs being on suicide vests. All because of the fever dream of this My Chemical Romance reject of a vice president that we have, telling us that this is something that President Trump needed to account for. And I just have to say that I'm so happy that fish don't have wallets, because that probably actually makes more sense than anything that just came out of J.D. Vance's mouth. Now here, oh no, the YouTube, okay, I'll have to figure that out for YouTube. Apparently the audio didn't go through there. My bad, guys. You'll have to catch the audio later. I apologize for the inconvenience. He essentially said that there would be nukes on suicide vests. Like, oh, this is very important that Donald Trump is nipping their nuclear department in the bud now, because otherwise you're going to have Iranians with nukes on vests going into supermarkets and engaging in nuclear blasts with impunity. And I'm never going to get away from the fact that the only reason any country is interested in a nuclear bomb is because other countries already have nuclear bombs, and anyone who has a nuclear bomb has to be negotiated with diplomatically. It's like, you notice how Israel is still murdering people in Gaza as we speak, even though there's a U.S.-backed ceasefire. They're murdering people in Lebanon. You know why they're not afraid of doing those things? Because they don't have nukes. Remember how North Korea was portrayed as a very dangerous entity that we had to take seriously? Notice how we don't do this bullcrap in North Korea. Do you know why we don't do this in North Korea? There you go. That's why they want nukes. But Fox News, the Republican Party, the GOP, wants you to hate these people, wants you to be scared of these people, when in reality, between America and Iran, only one of those two countries is surrounding the other with military bases, with dozens of military bases. I'm just saying, like, there comes a time when you have to talk about this legitimately. And moreover, and this is some fantastic reporting, if you don't utilize Drop Site News often, it was founded by Ryan Grimm, who did some great reporting during the Biden years about Gaza, went on to start his own reporting entity called Drop Site News, where they do a lot of foreign relations and foreign coverage that I think is pretty top notch in regards to what we get from the mainstream media. There are people right now in the Republican Party who are willing to vote yes on the War Powers Act. Obviously, Thomas Massie. There's a couple that you probably are not familiar with, names perspective, and then Nancy Mace has just come out of the woodwork as well, saying that she would also be interested in trying to, or rather in voting yes. And so there are people, the GOP whip who counts the votes, says he doesn't bring a vote to the floor that doesn't have the votes. Very Pelosi of him. He doesn't bring a vote to the floor that doesn't have the votes that he won't pass. And so as a result, he is not bringing it to the floor. Now, we now know, based on Drop Site News' reporting, that there are enough votes to pass. So I'm sure when you turn on mainstream media today, there will be wall-to-wall coverage of an effort to rein in Donald Trump's wartime efforts in Iran, right? Right? I'm willing to bet that that won't be the case, actually, because I don't think there's actually any interest in trying to rein any of that in. There's an interest in keeping a percentage of you, and a large percentage of you are probably listening to this show right now, very ginned up about the fact that Donald Trump is not following the rules in the name of starting a war, while not questioning at all whether or not the war should be started. Allow me to give you another example. We'll do some old school outside the box here on this. When Joe Biden pulled out of Afghanistan, it was probably the best thing that he did during his presidency. Of course, it wasn't reported that way by a large percentage of people because the military-industrial complex controls our media. When it happened, he made good on a promise that George Bush could not deliver on, that Barack Obama could not deliver on, that Donald Trump could not deliver on. Republicans and Democrats all failing in the name of making sure that the military-industrial complex was allowed to thrive. Apropos of nothing, please do know that 90% of the world's opiates are derived from Afghanistan, and that was when we were overprescribing opiates at record paces, resulting in mass deaths across the nation and ultimately resulting in the fentanyl crisis. Ironically enough, the moment the Sackler family got sued and the moment we stopped overprescribing opiates, we no longer were occupying Afghanistan. But if I remember correctly, that was in the name of making sure that they were defending democracy or something, right? The moment Joe Biden left, the Taliban took back over. They acquired a couple $2 billion worth of our equipment. People died. A lot of negative things happened as a result of our departure. In outside the box world, we were asking, how is it possible that we spent 20 years and trillions of dollars trying to set up systems that we were alleging the people of Afghanistan wanted, and literally the second, not even literally the second, because the planes weren't even off the ground. So it wasn't even the second we left. The second we were intimating that we were going to leave, 20 years of infrastructure completely fell flat on its face, and they immediately went back to business as usual the moment America left. Nobody was asking that question, though. We were asking the question about whether or not Joe Biden followed the correct policy, the correct structures in leaving Afghanistan. We were questioning whether or not Donald Trump and his removal of certain elements of the armed forces ultimately resulted in the bad departure from Afghanistan. We were fighting about it from partisan lines. And ironically enough, the loudest voice that were anti-leaving Afghanistan were the same people that were saying they were done with forever wars. It's almost like they are just wired to say whatever the orange man says in that particular moment. But no one was having a conversation about the principle of what we were doing. We were haggling over the process. And that is what you are seeing happening again now with Iran. And you'll have to excuse me if I do not believe even for a single second that Donald Trump perpetually moving the deadline back 10 days is somehow going to lead to a ceasefire down the line. At this point, I'm taking bets. Who thinks we'll get a new health care plan before we leave Iran? Because both of those are 2 weeks away and have been 2 weeks away for the entire time that Trump has been in the political realm. So we'll take bets on which one of those you think is going to happen more. The votes for the War Powers Act are there. And the reason people don't want to vote is because they don't want to be on the record supporting this war. It would be suicide, political suicide for the Democrats to do it because they're the ones that at least cosplay as the anti-war party. Republicans did it for a couple of years, and it was nice while it lasted, I suppose. But now I think they could probably get away with voting for it, and like 90% of their base isn't going anywhere. But in the 50-50 nature of the political system that we have, losing 10% of the vote is going to be a pretty difficult hurdle to overcome, depending on how gerrymandered your district is. I would like to see this come to a floor immediately. Personally, I would like to see it come to the floor, and I would like to see exactly who agrees with what's happening, who wants to put a stop to it, because that would help me learn who sucks and who actually means business. We're going to squeeze one final break in here before we call it a show. I've got at least 6 or 7 text messages piling through as well. I'd like to wrap up on this Iran war thing, but also if not, I can also dunk on Netflix for like 6 minutes easy. I don't know if you've seen the price increases. Have you guys seen how much money they were awarded for their merger falling through? No need for prices to go up. This might just be a thing that I complain about online after the show wraps up, though. We'll be back. Outside the Box, Ben Commodus, WHBY, Political Voices Network. All right, lightning round. Ken says the truth will come out about Trump once he goes off into the sunset. Half his cabinet will say he's crazy. It will be no different than when all of the Democrats came out and said Joe Biden was obviously slipping the moment after he bailed. It's easy to do it. And I say that to say it's easy to do it once there's no longer any stakes. Hell, the Pod Save America bros were singing the praises of Joe Biden up until the moment he declared that he beat Medicare. And now they're doing a show where it basically sounds like it's Outside the Box Redux trying to rebrand themselves as the voice of the progressive movement within the blah, 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 blah. MAGA's going to try and pull the same crap. And I'm here to tell you right now that I have unlimited RAM. And that's a nice feature to have because RAM is very expensive now in the Trump administration. Jim just simply says Fox News watchers are afraid of nuclear vests. That's probably accurate. Jerry says some Republican members in Congress say the right things on issues, but then always support Trump when it comes time to vote. I think you're exactly right. And I was going back and forth with Ben in the text line there because when Obama was in office, he avoided war with Iran, did the Iranian nuclear deal, and unfroze Iranian assets. And MAGA was livid that you would give Iranians their own money back in the name of avoiding going to an armed conflict. Then they spent the entirety of the Biden administration complaining that Biden was enabling wartime activities all over the country, or all over the planet, instead of focusing on Americans and American needs. Then Trump shows up, starts a war with Iran, and doesn't fund any of the American social programs, doesn't do anything to get us out of corporate greed, and then that is championed. And it's like, there comes a time when there's got to be some semblance of consistency in thought here if we're ever going to get out of it. Like, we just have to get to that point. At some point, we have to get to the point where there is consistency. And again, liberal hands are not clean in this, because I'm telling you right now, if Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, or Gavin Newsom started this war in Iran, they'd be telling you that it's about women's rights and democracy in Iran and freedom or whatever, and you would be falling for it. All right? You fell for it in Ukraine. You fell for it in the Middle East. But again, I give you guys the pass in the Middle East because of because of 9/11. I give everyone the pass that time. But you got to wake up to the game. When you got to trick conservatives into wanting to do war, you got to tell them about terror. You got to tell them about nuclear suicide vests. You got to remind them they're Muslim. You got to do those things. If you want to trick a Democrat, you got to bring up humanitarian rights. You got to bring up democracy. You got to bring up freeing other people that are less fortunate than us. Fun fact, America passed up China and North Korea in terms of the number of malnourished kids. Literally just yesterday, I was talking about how Democrats allowed the child tax credit to expire with, of course, the help of every single Republican in the House and Senate. But and now we find out that we have more malnourished kids in China, or rather in America, than we do in China. And to kind of tie this into the conversation from last segment, as the gap between Gen X and millennials, I remember a time as a picky eater when my parents would tell me there's starving kids in China, and that's why you have to eat all the food on your plate. Now I imagine our new parents today telling people, hey, there's starving kids a couple of houses down the block. They're disappointed because apparently we're worse at that than them. Under Donald Trump and, of course, Joe Biden, duopoly. DSL says it's an issue based on time, just like most votes. If this vote or insert vote here were held in 2027, the Democrats would be against it if they felt good about their chances of winning the presidency, and Republicans would be for it. These people only care about power for themselves. They're narcissists. Maybe I feel like this war conversation is different just because people were so fed up with it during the Biden years that I think Trump has less of a leash, and a Democrat coming forward would have even less of a leash than that. And mark my words, DSL, if Democrats flip the House and Senate, win the presidency by 2028, Republicans will give them 7 days and then be texting this show about why haven't Democrats gotten us out of Iran yet. Mark my words. Mark my words. It's going to flip on the drop of a hat. And I do have to laugh. I had one texter, people laughing at the idea of starving kids in jail. Yeah, right. I mean, it's not a funny idea, but like the concept of being told that as a kid, we all had that experience. That's a shared experience for all of us. We all know that sensation. But he had, unfortunately, this text line is so fast. Here we go. I learned how to show the text. Eric on my YouTube channel said, God forbid they do the work that they have no belief will get them anywhere. Welcome to the workforce. Do your job. Exactly. Isn't that funny? And I'll be the first one to admit I was very delayed in starting my social media presence in any kind of meaningful way. Because when you do it and it doesn't garner a lot of interest, you're like, oh, why am I even doing this? But you got to do it to like build the building blocks, right, of trying to start this career. Imagine working a job where you could just say like, oh, you know, I didn't see immediate benefits from that, or I feel like it was going to fail, so I'm just not going to do any of it. Absolutely hilarious sentiment to me. And it's funny because I never considered that conversation from that perspective. You just always heard, oh, Nancy Pelosi doesn't bring a vote to the floor unless she knows it's going to win. And that was supposed to be championed as like a good way to do business. And, yeah, it's funny. Thanks for knocking me outside the box a little bit there. Always nice when a listener does that as well. Thank you for that. I'll tell you guys what, we got about 60 seconds left here, so I think we're just going to call it there. For the record, just real quick, Netflix got $2.8 billion because the merger with them and Paramount fell through because of the HBO thing. So they got $2.8 billion, and they just announced they're going to raise their prices $3 per month after receiving $2.8 billion. You do not hate major corporations enough. Happy weekend, everybody. We've got No Kings rallies all over Wisconsin. I'm going to be at the Appleton one for a little bit. I'm going to bounce around like I did last time, ultimately culminating in Madison to meet up for a podcast I'm doing tomorrow night. Hopefully I see some of you guys out there. Please stay safe and don't do anything stupid while you're out there. Obviously follow along on the WHBY app. All you have to do is search WHBY in Google Play or the App Store. The show is also available anywhere you get your podcast. Shout out to the YouTube community and of course we will be on Political Voices Network at 1 p.m. today with all the fancy bells and whistles. Stay safe this weekend, everyone. Talk to you on Monday. Haley's up next.